Hi and welcome back to my channel. In this video you have my August wrap-up. Somehow, even though I was working the entire month, I read 9 more books than in July. I read a total of 41 books this month. I'm really not sure how I did that because it didn't feel like I was dedicating extra time to reading. And yes, you'll see in a moment, I read some graphic novels and I did read some issues of Spy Family. And I just realized I did have 2 of Yona of the Dawn as well. So I read 5 manga, 3 graphic novels, but that's only 8. So I still, novel-wise, read more than in July when I was on vacation for 3 weeks out of that entire month. I don't know how I did it. And yet, I did not have a single 5-star. It's a real bummer. Because the first book that I picked up in September, 5-star. But I'll save that for my vlog for September. So let's get into some of the statistics. As I mentioned, I read 41 books. I definitely made my goal of having my best August ever. I surpassed that by more than 2,000 pages. I read over 14,000 pages. Most of those via audiobook, but they still count. As far as audiobook listening goes, I had about 153-ish hours. Again, what I track is not the exact minute listen time because I listen at a faster speed, so I just estimate that based on the actual runtime. And 153 hours, I don't know how many full days that is. That's about 6.5 full days of my month I was listening to an audiobook. I like to listen to audiobooks. That should be pretty obvious. As far as my owned TBR goes, in the graphic that you see there, it says 12 books. I forgot to add the 4 books that I unboxed right before filming this wrap up, and I've already put all of those away, so I'm going to have to add those after editing that video, but I haven't done that yet. So I did bring in a total of 16 books. Not too shabby. Pretty good number. I am going to go book shopping tomorrow, maybe, so that number will probably go up for September. But even with all that, 31 of the 41 books that I read were from my own TBR. I'm doing a pretty good job of prioritizing the books that I have on my own TBR. So that was a net difference of 15 books. We'll see at the end of the year whether or not I have a net decrease or whether it's staying about the same. I know it's not getting longer though, thankfully. As far as genres that I've read, it's no surprise, it was over 50% fantasy. But I did branch out in several different, not normal genres for me, dipping my toes into mystery thriller, really enjoying that. I had nonfiction, obviously I had some manga, I had contemporary. I don't think I had any historical fiction, which is my other typical genre, but I didn't have any this month. It should come as no surprise that almost 75% of my reads were audiobook. If I counted right, I had 7 ebook reads. 3 of those were Spy Family, 2 of those were Yona of the Dawn. 1 of those was an ARC, Lightning Born by Julie Kagawa, which was not in any of my reading vlogs. It was one of the 3 books that I finished after I finished that last reading vlog. And I don't remember what the 7th one was off the top of my head. And then I had 4 physical books, and those were the graphic novels that I read. When it comes to the age group split, if you look at this graphic, it's almost exactly a third in middle grade, young adult, and adult. I've really enjoyed having my reading span the gamut, and I would have thought that more of them would have been middle grade reads because I'm trying to add more books back to my shelves and my classroom shelves. Maybe that will be the case in future months. It wasn't necessarily this month. And then I did also manage to read 4 nonfiction, of which I own 2 of them, plan to own 1 more. I'm not really interested in getting the 4th. So now let's look at the books that met certain goals. So first off, we have my Buzzwordathon book, and that also helps with another goal, which I'll mention in a moment. And the buzzword for this month is the word like. So for that, I read Ice Like Fire, and that is book 2 in the Snow Like Ashes series. Then when it comes to my 24 and 24, I had The Girl with 7 Names and A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. When it comes to series to start, even though I didn't need to, I started Black Sun, or I read Black Sun, which starts the Mirrored Heavens trilogy, and really enjoyed that. It took me a second for me to remember because I read this at the beginning of the month, but I did enjoy this one. And then as far as clearing series off my old TBR, I did clear one and ranted about this one, but it is off my list and soon to be out of my library. I restarted another. I plan to read books 2 and 3 in September, and then I made progress in this one. I am currently reading the third and final book in this trilogy, so I'll have another off the list. I'm getting really close to that. Other series that I finished, I also finished This Vicious Grace duology, as well as This Wicked Fate, which finished off another duology. As far as nonfiction goes, I had Seven Fallen Feathers and The Survivors of the Clotilda, along with The Girl with Seven Names, and a book that I probably will take into my classroom, Killer Underwear Invasion, How to Spot Fake News, Disinformation, and Conspiracy Theories. I mean, this is not my typical type of nonfiction read, but it was fun to read. Then we have the one book that I pulled off my classroom library challenge, which this one was a success. I also caught up with the published books in the Rick Riordan Presents imprint line and Rick Riordan's books himself, with The Sun and the Star, as well as It Waits in the Forest. There is the second book in the Pauamoa series that is publishing this month, September. I believe I need to get a hold of that. I do have an arc of it though as well. And then I also made progress in the Inheritance Games trilogy by reading The Hawthorne Legacy. I don't think there are any other series that I made progress in. There are several though that I did start. So one of the other things that I was trying to prioritize with a lot of the books that I was reading this month, because they were on my list for the July TBR, is some of the books that have been in my owned TBR closet the longest. And I did read 4 books that I purchased in an Owl Crate Black Friday sale. These were all Owl Crate Junior books. They no longer have Owl Crate Junior, which is really sad. But for those, I had A Comb of Wishes, Amira and Hamza, The War to Save Worlds, C.C. Rios in the Desert of Souls, and The Barren Grounds. All of these I did enjoy. As far as other categories of books that I read, I had, besides the manga that I've mentioned, I read 3 graphic novels. This was my July comic subscription book. And then I had 2 that I got for my birthday in July, which are graphic novel adaptations of previously published works. We have Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library and Spy School. I realized this is a long series, and it looks like all of them are getting graphic novel adaptations. So I have to see if I can get my hands on the other graphic novel versions, because I want to fill up and have as many graphic novels available for my students as possible. So I did have one other mystery that was not a book of the month, and that was The Twyford Code. Unfortunately, this one was not a success for me. I read 4 of my book of the month books. We have The Bullet Swallower, which I believe was the first book that I completed in August. We have The Bookbinder, The Reappearance of Rachel Price, and None of This is True. I also have a handful of other book box subscription books, some of which had been in my TBR closet for quite a while. We have Forged by Blood, which was a LitJoy subscription, I believe. Yes, this was a LitJoy book. And then we had Cruel Illusions, which was a Fairy Loot book. This one was not a success. This one was. We also had A Fragile Enchantment, which was another Fairy Loot book. Unfortunately, not a success. I knew it wouldn't be. I actually DNF'd. So I realized I did have a DNF this month. I also had an Illumicrate book. I love the design on this book so much, but I've already raved about it a lot. And a Fairy Loot adult book, A Fate Inked in Blood. So I was a little bit nervous about this because I'd heard that it was romantasy, but I've also heard that Daniel L. Jensen does really solid, strong fantasy world building, and I fully stand by and support that assumption. I definitely enjoyed this. I talked about it a little bit in my last vlog for August. So those are all of the categories for the books. I was going to wait and film the ratings portion of it tomorrow morning, but I may as well. I've got it all set up here. I'm going to go ahead and do that. So it'll take me a little bit of time in real life, but you'll see it in just a moment. Okay, I'm back to give an overview of my rating for the month. Average was 3.9, which is on the low side for me. But one thing I have been discovering about my taste is if the book is good to me and is average, but to me it feels slightly above average and was one that I enjoyed, 4 stars. If I really, really loved it, but it didn't quite have that special something to it, probably a 4.5. If the book was just fine and I didn't really enjoy it, it's gonna be in the 3.5 and the 3 stars. And then if I really hated it, which doesn't happen very often, but in August it happened twice, I had 2 books to rant about, then it gets below that. My sweet spot for most of the books that I read is 4 stars. That is by far the biggest stack that I have over here. 4 stars. And I did not have any 5 stars this month. It feels like I'm becoming a little bit more stingy with my 5 stars. 5 stars for me, the book is written so well, and there's that special something that hooks me in. I didn't have any of those this month, but I had some that were really good and I thought were standouts. So for me, those without the special hook are 4.5 stars. All that to explain what my overall rating was for this month. When it comes to books that I am not going to rate, I had 2, well, one that was a memoir, and I'm not rating this one. I just didn't feel like rating it. And then I had one that I DNF'd and one that I am not rating because I'm participating in the boycott of St. Martin's Press, although there are some issues about that I'm not going to get into here. Now let's come to the books that I did not enjoy. I had an ARC called Liar's Test. I do not know how to pronounce the author's name. That was unfortunate. Because it was an ARC, I did round up to 3 stars on NetGalley. And then we had book 5 in the Fablehaven series. This thing is huge. This is getting unhauled. The next 4 books that I have physically are also getting unhauled. Anything below a 4 stars gets unhauled. And then maybe sometime in the future I might go through some of my 4 stars. But 4 stars and above, I thought it was a solid book and I really like having it in the collection. Those are what stay in my library. I went and moved these over and now I've forgotten which is which. Okay. 3 stars, we have The Twyford Code by Janice Hallett, as well as Forged by Blood by Egbor Åkesson. 3.5 stars, we had The Bookbinder by Pip Williams. We also had Survivors of the Clotilda. I don't have a copy of that. As well as The Song of the Six Realms by Judy I. Lin. And then we had Camp Prodigy. I still have not decided whether or not I'm going to take this into my classroom. Those are the only exceptions. Books that are around like 3.5 stars, if I want a certain type of representation of a type of book that's maybe not for me, if a graphic novel, a middle grade graphic novel that I read gets 3.5 stars for me, I still might take it into my classroom library because it may appeal to other students, and I feel, at least by giving it 3.5 stars, I feel it's decently written. And then we come to my frankly massive stack of 4-star reads. This is the stack, and you can't even see all of it because I really can't lift all of it. So that was what most of my reads were this month as they fall over. Okay, we have The Bullet Swallower, A Comb of Wishes, Amir and Hamza, The War to Save the Worlds, The Spigot Fate, Ice Like Fire, The Sun and the Star, The Hawthorne Legacy, Black Sun, Spy School, Escape from Mr. Limoncello's Library, Cruel Illusions, Spy Family Volumes 9 and 10, It Waits in the Forest, The Reappearance of Rachel Price, Of Fate Inked in Blood, Of Jade and Dragons. And that brings me to my 4.5-star reads of the month. I have C.C. Rios in the Desert of Souls, The Raven Boys, A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, The Barren Grounds, The Unexpected Surprise of the Month, None of This is True. We also had Lightningborn, which I read as an ARC, Seven Fallen Feathers, a nonfiction book, Spin of Fate, and Spy Family Volume 8. Finishing off with Bloomability. So there you go. There are all of the books that I somehow read in the month of August while working full-time. Who knows how I did it. Thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one.